Wargaming China. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle now. And Bill, as we record this on Friday, there have been dueling consulate shutdowns between the United States and the People's Republic of China. Ours in Houston, theirs in Houston, ours in an unpronounceable city in their own country. Bill, there's a lot going on in and around China geopolitically. Not only do we have these consulate shutdowns, accusations of spying, industrial theft ongoing, South China Sea provocations, and just the underlying idea throughout this that China's got a lot of people and therefore could muster a superior force on the field of battle. The economic advance promised by Nixon's opening of China has not resulted in the political or the freedom advance that some might have expected. And to top this off, some might say that President Donald Trump has a history of, let's just call it bromance with tough guys. How do you see the situation going forward, realizing that this is Monday and the whole world could have blown up over the weekend since we recorded this?
I'm quite confident that this is going to air on Monday. I've never really much believed in the whole world blowing up theory. China has an extremely powerful land force, which extends, let's say 30 yards off of their coast, maybe, wading distance. And beyond that, they're essentially powerless as far as their army is concerned. They don't have transport abilities. They've got nothing like transport abilities. The United States is able to project force anywhere on any beach in the world. And China can't get across the Straits of Taiwan, even without our help or the help of the Taiwanese in terms of slowing them down. Their Navy is growing. I'm not terribly impressed by its quality, nor am I terribly impressed by their Air Force. So as far as their threat to the country goes, invading China would not be a good idea, but I don't think that's particularly on the board. Other than that, I think they're largely a paper tiger. And all of the stuff that you're talking about strikes me as the kind of things that that paper tigers do when things start going bad for them. They do a lot of saber rattling. They do an awful lot of aggressive kind of "don't you mess with me" kind of thing. But I think this COVID-19 pandemic was the end of China as we've understood China, not since Nixon, but modern China since, let's say, 2000, somewhere in there. The last 20 years of this unparalleled economic growth and more companies going to China, and China trying to develop a decent reputation. Under this current leadership, China has fallen just catastrophically in the eyes of the world, and they're feeling the pinch because they were never the economic juggernaut that most of us made it out to be.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Bill, because is China, like China by some people is seen as an economic powerhouse, but you could also look at it as an economic superdependent because everything they manufacture depends upon rich capitalist countries as markets for their goods. Which do you think it is?
I stumbled upon this phrase in one of the 7,000 episodes we did when COVID was really starting to break. And I really like it because I really think it really sums it up. China makes our stuff. That's what China does. China makes our stuff. And that means you can get a lot of cash, and certainly a lot of cash has come to China, and China's taken in a lot of cash in terms of being cash rich and so on. But to call them an economic powerhouse is to say that they have somehow, at least to me, is to give the impression that they are independent and that they are capable of being more than a one-client country. The United States is an economic powerhouse, and we're an economic powerhouse because we not only manufacture things, but we invent things, and we invent bleeding edge things. We have a aerospace industry in America. We have a extremely strong agricultural exporting industry. We have an entertainment industry that is exported all around the world. Our technology, when I say technology, I'm talking about all aspects of it, from computer games all the way down the line, all across the board. The United States, just as an example, is a powerhouse in every economic sector, medicine, that kind of thing. China makes our stuff, and they've amassed a lot of money doing that, and we've amassed a lot of debt in terms of wanting cheap stuff, but they've never been the behemoth that many people either think many Americans either think that they were or actually wanted them to be. I've never, ever been afraid of China or worried about China in terms of its ability to compete with the United States long term. I've worried a great deal about America's ability to continue to compete internationally, but China has never worried me. And Scott, everything that China does has the imprint of an exceedingly self-conscious country that is doing everything possible to aggressively cover a humongous inferiority complex.
Bill, there's an interesting sort of geopolitical concept out there that really was triggered in the public mind anyway by Nixon's opening of China, or Nixon going to China. And that's this idea that somehow prosperity will create a thirst for freedom. And as I mentioned in the lead into this, it doesn't appear to have had that effect to a great degree in China. I saw an interesting headline today that Apple is beginning production of iPhones in India. And India is at least nominally a democracy. I'm wondering whether you think it's a good idea for the United States of America to how do I say this? To adjust the knobs and the switches on the control panel so that companies like Apple will go to places like India and will slowly, if not rapidly, withdraw from China. In other words, the engagement hasn't worked for economic development, hasn't resulted in freedom. So now let's show them what being a backwater nation again looks like.
Well, yes, completely agree. But there are no levers or knobs that can be turned to do this. The reason China became as successful as it did was because of the economic leverage that they provided to American and mostly Western European countries. In other words, they allowed you to manufacture. I remember a person saying that manufacturing a wooden baseball bat, of all things, in America cost them $19 here and cost them $8 to do it in China. So the economic leverage that they had was enormous, and they were the only game in town. There was nobody underbidding China 20 years ago. China was the only country in the world that had the ability to manufacture high technology stuff and do it in large scale. In the intervening decades, as other countries have seen how successful China has been at making other people's stuff, countries like Vietnam and so on have really started to become competitive in that way. As far as India is concerned, this is just nothing but great news. If I was president of the United States, my primary alliance, of course, would be to the Anglosphere. That the cultural ties there between Britain and Australia, Canada, and so on, New Zealand, are almost unbreakable. But my strategic partner, the country I would be courting aggressively, would be India, because they have a huge population. They have a hardworking population. They have been a counterbalance to China throughout all of history. And by the way, when you think about the fact that in round numbers, you've got 1 billion people in China, and you've got about 1 billion people in India. If the Himalaya Mountains were not there dividing these two nations, then every single European war that you've ever heard of would be just a footnote to the kind of bloodbath that would have been happening all throughout human history on that border between India and China. So China has no one to blame but themselves for this. When I said that the market is what drove people to China, then you can say to yourself, well, if it's just the market, why would Apple move? It's not an inexpensive thing to do. And they're probably not getting a better rate in India. But I think what Apple has realized is that China's malfeasance and misbehavior, I don't think Apple is, certainly today's Apple, I don't think there's an ethical bone in that company's body. I don't think they're doing this out of kindness or goodness or out of a desire to decouple because of the sake of decoupling. I think what Apple has realized about China is twofold. Number one, China is not honest about their details, and when China arbitrarily locked down exports during the early days of the COVID pandemic, I think that got Apple's attention. And frankly, I think the main reason Apple's moving is because Apple's selfish enough to understand that there are large numbers of Americans who, after the way China has lied about the COVID pandemic, are unwilling to buy anything from China. And I think that's just purely a case of it's going to cost us money to move, and it's going to cost us a few more pennies on the dollar or whatever to make the thing. But if we stay in China, our sales will drop. And I think companies all around the world are making that same calculation.
Final thing I want to explore here is the idea that China holds a great deal of U.S. debt. They bought a lot of U.S. treasuries.
Right.
And I think you could look at that either way, too. Does China have an incredible amount of leverage over the United States because we owe them so much money?
They used to. Economies and debt and transfer of money and ledger books and all this stuff, it's all predicated on trust, and confidence is probably a better word. When the 1980s were really booming here in Los Angeles, I got here in '88, and at the end of the '80s, the Japanese economy was the one that was just unstoppable, and Japanese companies were buying huge amounts of real estate in Los Angeles. This troubled me quite a bit. But I was a limo driver at the time, and I was driving an American businessman someplace, and he wanted to talk, so we struck up a conversation about this huge debt and Japan buying all of these buildings and all this property. And he said, yeah, but they can't take it back to Japan, Bill. And I thought, well, there's something to that, isn't there, really? The debt the debt that we owe to China is a significant debt. But to be crystal clear about this, the economic damage done by China's handling of this COVID thing, forget about whether or not they created the virus in their lab, forget about whether or not it got out of the Wuhan virology lab or whether it came out of a wet market or whatever. Once China understood that they had a communicable disease that was highly communicable from human to human, airborne contagion. And once they knew this and didn't say anything about it, from that point forward, they became complicit in a cover-up and fraud that has cost the world economy trillions of dollars and will continue to cost the world economy trillions of dollars. God knows how many thousands and thousands of American businesses have been put out of business and how many hearts have been broken, and put aside that and the number of deaths caused by the Chinese Communist Party's traditional inability to face up to failure or mistakes. This is true for all totalitarian regimes, but for China especially, this business of face meant that the world got infected when they knew that this was going on, and they were sending people to Los Angeles from Wuhan on airplanes while not allowing them to travel from Wuhan to other parts of China. And to me, that's enough to say, okay, well, whatever debt we owe you, we're going to take a look at the damage that this has done, and we will deduct that from our balance.
So the Treasury Department says essentially all your T-bills are not legal tender anymore. We disavow them.
No, you can't do that because then you can't arbitrarily say a T-bill is worth nothing to this person but worth something to that person. I'm not saying you do that. I'm saying the Treasury bills are what the Treasury bills are worth, and you say, well, we owe you $3 trillion of these, and they're worth $3 trillion, and here's the bill. And we're going to take it out of the balance.
Ladies and gentlemen, the members of BillWhittle.com have made this program possible, along with more than 40 programs each month at BillWhittle.com. If you've not yet become a member, it may be time for you to explore that, because it's not just the content that you get. In fact, most of our content is out in the open. We do have some backstage programming that only members get to see. but it is that being in league with a group of constitutional conservatives and freedom lovers who want to see these ideas advanced around the world. You get to have conversations with them. You get to write and read on the member-written blog, and you get to be part of the team that's advancing liberty globally. If that sounds like the kind of people you'd like to hang out with, go to billwhittle.com and click that big green Become a Member button. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.